Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. At about 9 minutes and 35 seconds through his video called Mr. Cropper's Metaphorical Dimness, Azrianoch asks for a clarification of the word floating. What do I mean when I say one of their metaphors is floating rather than it's concretized or tied down or whichever? So I'm going to speak to you for a moment about that, and let's just know from the beginning, I better just make a disclaimer here. This is Ayn Rand's idea, not mine. Floating is actually technically a term out of Ayn Rand's epistemological system, and it comes from the idea that a concept that's valid has to be an integration of different things that are real. You take several different things that are real, you take the essence of them, name that your concept. Not really essence, that's Aristotle's term, but that's concept formation. Take all cars, it doesn't matter what they're made of, how big they are, what make or model or year they are, you just say automobile, internal combustion engine, man-made, moves people or things. And that brings in buses and airplanes even, but and then you specify it goes on the ground or doesn't, flies in the air or doesn't or whatever. You got different definitions for different things, but a concept has to be a concretization of different facts of reality. Now, you can have abstract concepts, like what is an economy? Well, an economy is, and then you could define all the different things that go into an economy, but they have to be concrete and real things. Let's see, what's an idea that you cannot trace to reality? Well, let's see, philosophy. Let's see if we can trace reality to philosophy or vice versa. A man's philosophical beliefs can cause him to make mistakes in his day-to-day life, and that can affect his happiness and his fortunes and everything else. A man's philosophical beliefs can affect a man's life. Okay, that's concretizable enough right there, and then we would need an example where a man's philosophy led him astray. We could give the Hitler example, so philosophy is easy enough. That's a very abstract concept. Now, let's try to concretize gremlin. Gremlin. Let's see. Creature nobody's seen. Hollywood made a movie about them. Magical. Non-existent. Okay, how do you concretize that? So gremlin is actually an arbitrary concept. It's a floating abstraction because it's an abstraction that it has not been made from reality and cannot therefore be reduced to reality. Any concept that is valid will be a concept that has been integrated from reality and that can be turned back into reality, be concretized. So when I say concretize something, I mean reduce that to reality for us. Show us what the hell you mean. That's all concretize means. Concretize that, please. Make it concrete. Something right here, something touchable, basically. If you cannot do that with a concept, it's a floating abstraction. Now, maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's not to be a floating abstraction or have a floating abstraction. Why would it be a bad thing? A floating abstraction has the sinister nature of distracting a person from reality, because insofar as you're thinking about or daydreaming about the floating abstraction of one kind or another, you're not focusing on reality to your detriment, obviously. Now, throughout the Dark Ages there were 1,000 ways this sort of thing was done, arguing about, for example, how many angels fit on the head of a pin. This has been these sorts of non-concretizable, floating, abstract, unrelated to the real world topics have actually been offered as a good way for kids in grammar school to get used to arguing ideas, which is tripe. It's nonsense. Very, very bad. To divorce ideas from reality. It's a very bad idea. But they actually, their curriculum outlines and stuff, I believe E.D. Hirsch, H-I-R-S-C-H, Floating metaphor would be one that hasn't been concretized, and like I said in my first video on the subject, cannot be concretized. Now I thought of a good joke. It's not a very good joke, but what the hell. What happens when you give a postmodernist a metaphor? Answer: he runs with it. Ha 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 ha. When I say Azrinach is the naked emperor, he has no clothes, and I'm the boy pointing it out, then his reply to me just runs with that. It just gets, and then he says, we're both naked, but I choose to be, I'm naked on purpose, I point out nudity. There you go, okay? There's one for you. And if you're going to say that Azrinach, Spook, and Meridian Frost and whoever have used no metaphors that are unconcretizable, all of their metaphors are concretizable and useful, if that's the assertion, then you have to defend all those postmodernists on that panel in Charlie Rose show. Now you're screwed, because you can't get around it. Postmodernists can't think. They use metaphors wrongly, and they are clueless about how to argue. They're clueless about logic. They're clueless about syllogisms. They're clueless about intellectual content. They're clueless about any kind of intellectual discourse with meaning in the real world. So, with no further ado, I rest my case.